good afternoon. Thank you for that introduction. And we're passing out the packet that we're going to use for this orientation or presentation. What we really want to get out of it is that we kind of use what we use to help our volunteers, how we train them so that they could come back to Chairla and help us fill out applications. So this is part of it. So we're not going to make you experts today in the hour that we have, but we do want to at least get you to be able to answer basic questions about the process, about the application, and about the evidence that's required for the DACA application, the packet that they need to send out to immigration. And again, my name is Luis Perez. I was I graduated from high school in 2000, so this is before AB 540 existed. So I know what it's like to be without AB 540. I now know what it's like to have the California DREAM Act, AB 130, 131, and I know what it's like to not have the DREAM Act, right? That's something that we all need. And because I turned 31 in March, I was aged out of DACA, and I would be aged out of the DREAM Act, even though I've been working on this for over 10 years now. So as you can see, a lot of the young people that are undocumented get older, right? So the DREAM Act is one thing that we need, but really we need something immigration comprehensive that includes those that aged out, our families, everybody, right? Even those that are not on the college track. So we need to fight for something that really helps everybody. Ignacio, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So hi everyone, my name is Ignacio Rodriguez. As the person who introduced us mentioned, I was formerly one of the co-chairs of IDEAS in 2009, and I was undocumented for 19 years of my life until right before law school when I was able to adjust status through my mother. But because this was something that was given to me for no choice of my own, it's not like they evaluated my merits or saw what I have done and gave me this, it was just a given thing. I really want to make sure that we continue to have a process someday where all undocumented youth that want to aspire higher education or want to go into a career or profession can also benefit, and not only them, but their families as well. And so now I'm a third-year law school student at UCLA School of Law, where Luis graduated from as well, and I hope to become an immigration attorney in the public interest sector.
Right. So like I said, I graduated in 2000, and then I went to community college at LA Mission College in Selmar, and then during my time at Mission College, that's when AB 540 passed, and then the UC system adopted AB 540. That's how I was able to transfer to UCLA in 2003. And that summer, that's when we applied to become an official student group, IDEAS at UCLA, and also the AB 540 project, who's hosting this event today. We got funding back then to start doing this type of workshops in 2003 because Maldev back then was the only one doing this type of workshops. And the person that was doing the workshops went to law school and they had no one to do it. So pretty much IDEAS took on that role to do community presentations on AB 540. Nowadays, a lot of people that are coming out for DACA applications, especially at Chairla, they don't even know that AB 540 exists. So it's becoming very relevant again with all these new people who maybe they didn't know they were undocumented, and because of DACA, their parents told them you're actually undocumented, you're not going to deal with it. You need to find out more about AB 540. So our DACA orientations include some information about AB 540 and the California DREAM Act. Okay, so, oh wow. Okay, so again, we're going to start with the presentation, and we're going to share a little bit about the process at Chairla because it's important, not because that's what Chairla is doing, but because it's what the process requires. It's very unlikely to be able to do the DACA application without the steps. It is very heavy on evidence, and it's not the easiest application to fill out, right? So we at least want to make you familiar with the issues that we encounter, and also show you how we're doing the orientations and how you're going to be able to use the packet that we gave you to help other students at your schools, right? You have the checklist. That's by far our best tool that we have. Is there more packets? We have 50. So if there's more than 50 people, we might be able to ask them to take one and make more copies of it. Any extra ones? Yeah. So if we could ask to take one packet and make more copies, hopefully we can do that.
So like,
okay.
Are there a lot of people?
About 10 more. So when everybody gets a checklist, you'll be able to follow. But the important part of the checklist is that it's divided in sections. And for DACA, there's 5 requirements that people need to come up with evidence, right? And what we tell people when they come to CHIRLA is, forget everything you learn on 34 a tu lado or La Opinion or anywhere that you've seen DACA information, please forget about it, at least for the hour that we're going to be helping you understand it. So anything that you think you know about DACA, let's put it aside right now and hopefully use our system to be able to understand it a little better. There's 5 requirements. They're numbered 1 through 5 on the checklist, and we literally take that checklist and go one by one. And we remind people, don't mix them. They're similar, they sound similar, but they're actually doing a different thing, each of the 5 requirements. Okay, so we tell people really, don't mix them. We can skip this. This is information about CHIRLA very quickly. CHIRLA's been around since 1986, since the last amnesty. They became BIA accredited, Board of Immigration Appeals accredited organization that helped people back then fill out their amnesty application. And they've been around ever since, advocating for more, to improve the lives of undocumented and immigrant families. Okay, so that's what they've been around. So CHIRLA services, this is pretty much what applicants receive at CHIRLA. They're going to get screened, which we use the checklist to make sure that they qualify for DACA, right? That's the first part. Do you even qualify? Once we know that they qualify, are you an easy case, a simple case, or you're a complex case that we can do or that we cannot do? So we're going to look over their documents, make sure they have it, and the last part will be completing their application. The evidence part of the DACA application is by far where most of the work goes. Spending about 2 hours of FaceTime with the person trying to get their evidence together. So if we can go forward. So these are the complex cases that we don't see at CHIRLA, and I would suggest to you that these are the cases that you make sure to refer to an attorney or to an organization, right? And those don't only include people who don't qualify for DACA, right? If they don't qualify based on the first requirement, they shouldn't waste their money anywhere else. There's no attorney that can submit an application that meets 4 requirements and get approved. They need to meet all 5 requirements. So we don't do those. Anybody who has been arrested, charged with, or convicted of any crime, misdemeanor, or a felony, we don't see at CHIRLA. That doesn't mean that they're automatically disqualified. There are some disqualifying crimes that we'll go over when it's time, but we don't see any of those. And the application pretty much is asking, have you ever had a conversation with a police officer because you got in trouble? So it includes everything. And in that case, it's better that they do it with an attorney, not with a nonprofit like CHIRLA, who's not doing what they call G28. We're not representing them through the process. We're just helping them fill out the application. There's language in the application about gangs, about national security. So if people have been involved with gangs, they need to do this process with an attorney to make sure that they have that representation. Those who obviously don't meet the requirements shouldn't be doing it, and we're not going to help them at CHIRLA. And those people who are currently in immigration proceedings, so they're going through a deportation case or had a deportation case, is better that they do it with an attorney, because if ICE was to catch them at the store, they need to be able to say, I don't want to speak to you unless my attorney's with me, right? If you don't have an attorney, you might not be able to do that. You don't have the right to an attorney for immigration purposes. So that's why, even though they're eligible, right, DACA was made to make sure that people are protected from deportation. If they do have a deportation case, they should do it with an attorney. So this is what you have in your checklist, in your packet. You have the checklist, that's what we're going to be working with. Birth certificate translation, that's an example of something that we're going to go through as part of the packet. We're providing it to you so that you can share it maybe if the applicants need it, because we don't want them going to notarios. The notarios are known for, oh yeah, I'll translate your birth certificate. By the way, I could do your DACA application. We don't want to send applicants to that trap. So they could do it on their own. We'll go over that. The cover letter, we have a generic cover letter in your packet. It's not required for the application, but it's recommended that they submit one. The one you have is generic. Obviously, if they wanted to do it more customized to the information they're sending, they could retype it and include that information. And then the 1, 2, 3, 4, the forms that are part of the DACA application, and they all go together. And at the end, we have the include list, instructions of what to do once you have your application, get it certified through the United States Postal Service, include the money order, and include the 2 passport photos that's included in there. So at Cherla, we're using a 3-step model where people come to our orientations. That could be a group as big as you, 20 to 100 people, we've done those. And that's where we go through the checklist, make sure they understand they qualify for DACA, and then find out if they're a complex case so we can refer them out. The second, once they do that, they get an appointment, so they can come back for pre-screening and the intake. And that's a group of, like, it could be 2 or 10 people. They're smaller groups. That's where we go through their evidence, make sure that they have evidence for each one of the requirements. And after they do that and they fill out the intake form, then we give them an appointment to come back when their application is ready to pick up and pretty much just to sign. So those are so every person that we're helping, we've seen at least 3 times, often 4 or 5 times, because they need to go back and look for more evidence. So this is more explaining that process. We don't have to go through it. Moving forward. So at the orientation, this is what we do. We explain what DACA is, and more importantly, what DACA is not. A lot of people are coming to Cherla saying, I'm here to learn about the DREAM Act. It's not the DREAM Act, it's far from it, right? It's not even a law. People think, I want to know about the new law. It's not a law, it's a program under the Obama administration. And if Obama doesn't win, it's a program that probably, and Romney has already said he's not going to continue the program. If it was a law, then laws need to be changed through Congress, right? So we could be sure that even if there's an administration change, the laws will survive unless Congress goes through the process of changing the laws. But that's not what we have. It's an administrative fix because Congress didn't fail to pass the DREAM Act, and President Obama said, I'm going to act without you passing the law, and pretty much use my powers as a president to refrain from enforcing immigration laws against this group of students. Right? I'm going to give them a protection from deportation for 2 years, and during those 2 years, I'm also going to give them the ability to work. Right? So prosecutorial discretion is something that we've had for a long time, but the way that we have it now is something that you apply for. In the past, the discretion by the department was to, as a defense. Once you get caught by immigration, they can use their discretion not to deport you. But we never had it in this way where you actually apply, almost turning yourself in, right? Like, here, I'm undocumented, give me this benefit. In the past, it was mostly a protection, a defense to being deported once you were in their custody. Now, it's different because you're allowed to come and say, I'm one of these people who are undocumented, use your discretion to give me a protection for 2 years, and then the work permit comes with it. So DACA is actually giving people the protection and the work permit. Once they have that, that's what they're actually going to get on the mail, the work permit. With the work permit, then they'll go to the Social Security Administration office and request a Social Security number. Once they get the Social Security number, they have to go to the DMV and request a California ID or driver's license. So they're not going to get a packet with everything we need, right? We're only getting the work permit. With the work permit, then you go Social Security and then license. So now we're going to go to the eligibility requirements. We're using the checklist, the way that I told you that we normally do it in the DACA orientations at Cherla. But we're going to do something else. After each requirement, we're going to show you a visual of what we actually do when people come in and we help them with the evidence. Because we go forward. This is a checklist. Keep going. Keep going. So when people, the applicants go to Cherla, they're actually going to walk into a room with tables, and they're going to see in front of them 5 pieces of paper. Pink paper is number 1 through 5. And they sit down, and there's going to be somebody, maybe me, maybe one of the other fellows, in the middle, walking people through the process of, okay, let's start organizing your evidence. You know, paper number 1, this is what's going to go there. On page number 2, this is the evidence that you put on there. because there has to be different evidence for each requirement. So either it's going to be this room or the other room. It doesn't matter, it's the same process, with the 5 documents. So that's what we call pre-screening. And as you can read on your checklist, requirement number 1, we're going to go over them. Requirement number 1 requires that you're under the age of 31 on June 15, 2012, right? So that if you were 30 or younger, you qualify. But if you turn 31 on that day, on June 15, 2012, you don't qualify anymore. And the requirement, the first and the second requirement are very strict. So yeah, it's only a day, but you're disqualified if you were not under 31 on June 15. If that was your birthday, you were no longer under 31. You were 31 on June 15, you're not eligible. The second part of that requirement is that you are at least 15 years of age when you submit your application. That means that a 14-year-old is obviously under the age of 31, so they qualify, but they need to wait until they turn 15 to be able to apply. Okay? That's probably the easier one, right? And go to the next one. And how are they going to prove that? They're going to prove, so this is the paper, a sample of the paper that it's going to be in front of them. And on top of the paper, we're going to ask them to put the birth certificate and a translation of that birth certificate if their birth certificate is in a language other than English. So it's going to, on top of this one, for the most part, we're seeing birth certificates with a translation. We're seeing a recent passport. So the passport helps us both with their identity and with their photo ID that it's required under here. La matrícula consular that a lot of people have. It's cheaper than the passport. They can use that one as well. A school ID if they're currently in school, right? So some people that graduated high school 5 years ago, having your high school ID is not going to help you. But if you're in college, maybe your college ID is going to help you. And driver's license. Some people have a driver's license. Some people went to Washington or another state that gives them. They'll have it. They could include that as photo ID and proof of identification. So this is what it actually looks like in the room where people are starting to separate their evidence. What's the next one? And we included this one, the translation, to just show you that this is not something that you need a notario for. We had people who spent up to $500 just to get their birth certificate translated with notarios. Okay? Pretty much fraud. But this can be done by anybody who's bilingual in Spanish and English, right, if that's the language they're translating from. And the person who's translating just has to write their name, sign it and date it, and certify that they're bilingual in both languages that they're translating from. So they can do it on their own. They can use the sheet that we just gave you, or they can retype it and use, a new one. So that's available to you to share. Under the first requirement, one of the issues that we're screening for is 17-year-olds. Because in this country, we blame everything that kids do on their parents, but once you turn 18, they're gonna blame it on you. So the whole being undocumented becomes an issue when you turn 18. When you turn 18, you start accruing unlawful presence, and that's when your unlawful presence starts counting, and there's consequences to being in the U.S. without lawful presence. So it's very important for many reasons for folks that are 17 years old to apply for DACA before they turn 18. One of them is that once they turn 18 and they're protected under DACA, they're not going to accrue unlawful presence. And if they were to get married in the future, for example, they don't have to go back to Ciudad Juarez or leave the country to do consular processing. They might be able to do it in the country if they avoid having unlawful presence. That's one of the benefits. Other issues dealing with the 17-year-olds is that there could be some more permanent solutions to their immigration case that are only available if they apply as minors before turning 18. There's SIGs on top of benefit, or what would we call it? Immigration relief that's available to young people who are either juvenile hall, who are abused, who are homeless, who are in foster care, but they only get that if they're under the age of 18. When they turn 18, there's going to be very little we could do for those folks, right? So that's why we have a project with CareLab, with the Deferred Action Clinic, to go out to high schools and try to identify 17-year-olds to help them do the application as soon as possible before they turn 18. The second requirement, so we're fine with the first requirement, right? That they were under the age of 31 on June 15, 2012. That was a Friday when President Obama made the announcement. And the second part of that first requirement is at least 15 when they submit their application. The second requirement that also requires proof is that to prove that they came to the U.S. before the age of 16. Okay? So we have cases, and I'm going to give you this scenario, somebody that came in when they were 2 years old, left the country, came back when they were 5, left the country, and came back when they were 20. We're looking at the first time they came into the country, right, when they were 2. Maybe they don't have evidence that they were here when they were 2, but they have evidence that they were here when they were 5. Right? Either one helps us prove that they were here before the age of 16. Right? But if all they have is evidence of when they came when they were 20, it's going to be a hard case to prove. Right? And this second requirement is also very strict. So if a applicant was in Tijuana, for example, the day before their 16th birthday, or turned 16 in Tijuana and jumped the border or crossed the border the next day when they were already 16, they don't qualify because they did not enter the country before the age of 16. It's not about where did you celebrate your birthday. It's more, did you enter the U.S. before the age of 16 the first time? Okay, so that's another.
And what duration, is there a certain time frame? You came in at 5 and had to be here for next?
Well, this is not, that's why I was saying we'll go one by one, because there is a continuous residence requirement that's separate from proving that they came in before the age of 16, right? For this requirement, we're only looking, were you younger than 16 the first time you came into the U.S.? And for that, I always ask, what's the first thing that young people do when they come to the U.S.? What's the first thing? I was going to say Disneyland. But yes, try to enroll in school. And before they enroll in school, they need to get their vacunas, right? Their immunization record. So that's one of the main records that we're seeing, the immunization record. And we're looking at the old card, La Amarilla, that's all falling apart because it's so old. That's the one that we want to see, not the new yellow transcribed page. Because the one that's new and transcribed often doesn't have the location or where that vacuna was given, the immunization was given. So the old card has a stamp from a clinic that says Clínica del Pueblo on Wilshire Boulevard and the date, right? And it has the applicant's name on it. That's what we want. We want to be able to have 3 things in most documents: the name, the location, and the date. Those are the 3 things that are important of each document. So the vacunas, that's one of the first things they do even before starting a transcript with the schools, with elementary school or kindergarten. Some people had a passport or a border crossing card when, their face actually looks like a baby. You can go to the next one, actually. Okay, so that's what a border crossing card may look like when they were babies, to show that they came before the age of 16. They maybe have a passport with a stamp that shows that they came before the age of 16. Las vacunas, like over there, the yellow card, that's the one we need with the stamp. Or anything that shows that they came to the U.S. before the age of 16. It could be transcripts, right? If they use their CUM, on the CUM is going to have not only their high school transcripts, but also middle school and elementary school and maybe even kindergarten information. They can use that to prove this, right? So often the transcripts could help us prove different things. We'll make extra copies of that transcript to include it in different parts of the application. So immunization cards, the records, medical records, those are really the top 3. Those are the ones we're seeing more for this particular requirement. Any questions about this one? So we can go.
You said that the transcripts, so the high school transcripts?
I'm saying that sometimes the CUM, the cumulative record, the transcripts, doesn't only include high school classes, but also middle school and elementary school. Right, so the elementary school part of that transcript would help them prove that they came before the age of 16, or even the middle school record.
No, it's unified. They have a website where if the student is an LA unified student, they can go to that website and request that special transcript that has all those things.
Right.
So the schools don't have it. The district has it.
Right. And then that one is when they enter the district, right? So when you enter the district, that's probably the date that we're going to use to show that you came before the age of 16. Okay. But also another misconception is that for DACA, that transcripts are required, and that's not the case. There might be people that have better, not even better, but other evidence to show this requirement, or so high school transcripts are one way of proving this, but it could be something else. So people that say, I've been waiting a month and I'm not applying because I don't have my transcript. Well, do you have other type of evidence that could help you prove it? That's fine too. Transcripts are not required, are great evidence, good evidence, but are not the only way to prove many of these requirements. So, question on this one?
Here, this checklist that you put letters of recommendation from teachers, is that something that's simple to teacher writing? Like this is
For the first and second requirement, they're not using letters, right? These are the very strict requirements where they need documents. The affidavits or letters are not being used for the first and second requirement. So even for this one, to a letter that said, yes, I went to her quinceañera, it was, at the labor center, we rented the hall, and we had her quinceañera there, so she was in the U.S. before the age of 16. A letter like that is not going to help them prove that they were here before the age of 16. It has to be more documents, official documents. They're strict on this requirement. What's that? Right. Report cards, bills, anything that's under the name from before the age of 16 would help. And we're always asking from 2 to 3 things for each requirement. And so.
What I was going to say is that if you're in the LA USD district, like Whittier, for example, it actually requires 2 weeks for you to get all your paperwork. So make sure that you get these students ready, because it takes a while for them to get the keys.
Right.
And then some schools are not even providing them with the information, so make sure that they're very aware of the different actions, so that when you talk to them, they can tell them about.
That's a really good point. So as educators, this is where you can step in and help. Obviously, LAUSD has their own system, but for those of you in here who don't have schools within LAUSD, or I see some community college educators here too, if you could go to your administrative offices and make sure they have a good, easy, and efficient process of providing transcripts to the students, because at times, since undocumented students tend to not be able to work in the United States legally, they're going to depend on these transcripts if there's nothing else left. And so in order to make this process as easy as possible to the students, it's really great if you guys could support and also encourage your schools to be efficient in distributing these transcripts.
Okay, we're going to move a little faster so that we can get to Ignacio's part, which is going to go over the actual application so you can be familiar with the forms and the issues related to those forms. So, number 3, this is more what you were asking earlier. You need to prove continuous residence for the last 5 years, right? For somebody like me who's been here 21 years, they don't care about, to show some evidence since I've been here. For this requirement, they're only looking at the last 5 years. So sometimes people come with the whole stack of everything they've had. We only take out things from 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. That's what's relevant for the DACA application. You don't need to show that you were here since 2000 or before. We're looking at evidence for 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And for the most part, if they came to the U.S. before 2007, it doesn't matter what month of the year they're bringing evidence for. But if they first came to the U.S. in 2007, then we need to be more strict about, does the evidence show that they came before June 15, 2007? Right? If their date of entry was June 14, 2007, then they barely made it. But if their initial date of entry was June 16, 2007, then they don't qualify because they weren't here five years, right? So this is an issue that we see when people came into the U.S. in 2007. We need to look closely at the evidence for that year. But if they came in 2000, then we know they've been here since 2000, then we could be more flexible with the month of the evidence that they're providing for 2007, 2008, 19, 11, and 12. Yes?
Sorry, this goes back to the 17-year-old thing. Even if you turn 18, is it still good to file as soon as possible so you stop how much time
Right.
you have to create?
So once you turn 18, and if you spend a year, so 3 months, I think, so if you spend 3 months in the U.S. with unlawful status, with unlawful presence, then you had to a year. when you leave the country, you activate the 3-year bar?
Yeah, so, well, basically how the statute works is that if you're in the country without any lawful status after turning 18 years old for 180 days after turning 18, then that's when, if you're able to process, for example, through marriage or through another type of relief, you would have to exit the country and you wouldn't be allowed to re-enter and process until 3 years later. And then if it goes over that 180-day period, then you would have to exit and not be allowed to come in, maybe even as long as like 10 years, depending on how consular processing works in the country that they're forced to go back to.
So it's the date that they would stop you when you get approved or when you apply? What's the date that they start?
Oh, okay, so it would be when like within the approval date, yeah. But it's not like they're giving you status at that point, they're just saying you have to go back and get that process finalized by your consulate.
It would still be beneficial to someone that's in that situation.
Yeah.
They don't really want to forget.
Right, it might be 3 years instead of a 10-year bar that they avoid. Okay, we'll move quicker. So for number 3, that's where we could use bank statements for the last 5 years that has a name, right? It obviously has information that shows that they've made transactions in the U.S. Transcripts are by far what's being used the most, but that's not the only way. People who graduated from high school or college more than 5 years ago, then transcripts are not doing much for them. So that's what we'll look at employment records like tax records or pay stubs to show that they've been here for the last 5 years. But so for the 5 years, go back. There's many ways of proving this, right? These are just examples. So you don't have. There's many ways for people to prove that they've been for the last 5 years. Cell phone bills, bank statements, lease agreements. There's a lot of ways to prove it, but you just have to have. It's better when you have something consistent for the last 5 years, right? Than have one thing here and one for the other year. It's good to have consistent things for each year, 2 to 3 things for each year. That's what we recommend. And we're getting good results. A lot of people are getting approved, so we're not going to change our system because it's working for us, right? So 2 to 3 things per year is what we're recommending people to. For number 5, in addition to having to prove that they've been here for the last 5 years, they need to show that they were in the U.S. on Friday, June 15, 2012, when President Obama made the announcement. And so if one of the dreamers was disappointed because the Dream Act didn't pass and they left to Tijuana, when they heard the news that deferred action was passed and then turned around and crossed the border again, that person wasn't in the U.S. on June 15, 2012 and doesn't qualify for deferred action, even if they have the other requirements. So you need to prove that you were here on June 15, 2012. And a lot of people are having trouble with the evidence for this requirement. Go to the next one. Next slide. So this is examples of how people can prove that they were here on June 15, 2012. School records, if you were still in school, especially high school, they'll take roll, right? Either a line to show that you were in school or a T if you were late. There or late, it doesn't matter, it shows that you were in class that day, so that's one of the things that some of the applicants are asking from schools to show attendance record for June 15, 2012. Some of them came, got out of school beforehand, so they won't have something for June 15. So the rule is that we have, if you don't have something for June 15 for that day, you need to sandwich that day with something from before and something from after to show I was here before the 15th and I was here after and I didn't have a chance to leave. So we're looking at the month of June, something close to the 15th from before and after. Right? Coyotes are like $5,000 right now, so I don't have the means to go and leave the country and come back, or 3 days vacation is not worth it. So you just need to convince them that you were here on the 15th. These are examples. The bank statements are really good because they'll say that on June 15 you were at 7-Eleven and you spent $3.50 on a Slurpee, right? That's good evidence. If you graduated on the 15th and your name's on the program, you were obviously there, and you would show pictures of you on the cap and gown attached to the program. If you went to Magic Mountain to celebrate and you have the picture on the roller coaster and it says June 15, 2012, that's evidence to show that you were here that day. For this requirement, that's where we can get more creative about how to prove that you were here. When people completely say I have nothing, absolutely nothing to prove that I was here on the 15th, that's when we go to Facebook, Gmail, GChat to see if there's emails or conversations that they had before the 15th that will tell us something about where they were on the 15th. For example, this happened on a Friday. If on Wednesday you had a G-chat with a friend or an email, hey, what are you doing on Friday? And your response is, nothing, I'm staying home because I'm broke, right? That email from Wednesday would show that on the 15th you were at home because you were too broke to do anything, but it shows that you were at home, right? So that's evidence that you were here on the 15th at home. So that's where you can get creative, but they need to find something. We only had one person that immigration sent a request for further evidence because we gave them instructions to include emails that they sent on the 15th, right? I have emails that I sent to my friends. Instead of sending emails that he sent as evidence emails that he received, which means that his Gmail account received 2 emails. It doesn't say anything about what he did that day. So he got a request for more evidence, and because of him, we don't trust students anymore, applicants. We need to see the evidence that they're submitting before we approve their packet for submission. So again, many ways of proving this, but if they don't have something for the 15th, they need to have something from a little bit before and a little bit after. And we're looking at the month of June. If it's May, if it's July, it's too far out. We're looking at the month of June for evidence. Here also, letters, affidavits are okay in addition to something else. An affidavit by itself, we don't think is strong evidence, but they can use an affidavit by somebody that says, yes, we went to play pool, to the pool, or we went running, or we went hiking that day. Here's a picture of that, of the sunset that we witnessed that night, right? So a letter like that might be helpful for them. Questions about the 15th? And the last one, you can go to the next. They need to prove the education requirement, and this is not the DREAM Act, so the education requirement is much lower. They only need to prove that they're either still in high school, graduating from high school, they're enrolled in a GED program, or have attained a GED high school equivalency or GED certificate, right? So these are examples. We'll go and take it out of the frame, make a copy of the high school diploma or their GED diploma or high school equivalency exam, or an enrollment form. They say, I'm already enrolled in a GED program. In addition to that, we'll probably make copies of their assignments, their books, their syllabus, to show that not only did I enroll, I'm actually attending classes and I have the intent to finish the GED program. For that, USCIS has said that they're going to look at the quality of the program that they enrolled to get their GED. They can go to GED Express for $99 online. They really need to go to an established organization, a school district, community college that's known for doing this type of work and do that type of program. And if you're still in high school, then in addition to transcripts, in addition to your attendance record, you're probably going to need something that's usually not on the transcripts, which is a current class schedule, right? So that's something that the schools need to also provide, a current class schedule if the applicant's still in high school. So that's what we put it there. So those are the 5 requirements that are required, that you need to submit evidence. And then the last requirement on your list is that they don't have a criminal record, or a serious criminal record. So if we go to the next slide. These are the automatic disqualifications, the first list. Any felony, you're disqualified. How much time do we have? Is that 10 or? Okay. So we can wrap it up, but we pretty much already went through the requirements, which is the important part of it. And people with the criminal records, it doesn't matter what kind. There's some that are disqualifying you, but those people should be doing the process with an attorney. And that's why we're not going to go over them, but if you find that somebody that has a criminal record, even if it's minor, they should do it with an attorney. And that's what we want you to be familiar with, to know to send them to an attorney, not to help them submit an application that's going to get them in trouble. USCIS has said we're not going to use the information in an application to use it against the applicant unless they have a criminal record, unless they get caught committing fraud in relation to the application. So we don't want to get them in that type of trouble. And also they have potential immigration issues. We talked about those earlier. We recommend, they're not disqualified, but we recommend that they do it with an attorney who's going to represent them if they were to get in trouble.
So as quickly as possible, I'm going to go over the last section of the presentation. So right here we have a list of referrals. The reason why we keep mentioning notarios is because there's been a lot of notario fraud that has been going on, and there are good notarios out there. There are people that mean well, but there's also people that don't mean well. And regardless if they mean well or not, you can't take a legal recourse against them if they for some reason make a mistake on your application. And so you want to make sure that your students are protected and they go to people that know. We're talking about Shirley here, but there's lots of other great organizations that are out there. Some are listed on the screen. So just make sure that they speak to a representative, because also the representative will be able to indicate the pros and cons of applying. And so that's something that is a conversation that the student and perhaps the parents as well should have with a licensed attorney. So next slide. So let's see, next slide please. So this is just a sample of an intake form. This is just to get a sense of who it is that we're working with. It provides several information. One of the things that your students should be aware of is that they will have to list every single address of where they've lived since coming to the US. So that's something that does take time, especially since they probably don't remember where they lived when they were only 2 years old. And so that's one of the key parts. And also there's some questions almost at the end where it asks if maybe the student qualifies for another type of relief. DACA is only valid for 2 years, and then who knows if it's going to be able to be renewed. So the ultimate goal is to get some kind of permanent legal status for your students. And so that's why at the end we asked about VAWA qualifications, U visa, T visa, and SIGIS. So those are just to make sure that your students are protected. Next please. Okay, next one please. One more. We're skipping a bunch. Great. So now we're going to start with the actual forms that you're going to include. Next slide please. This one's the G1145. This is the e-notification form. What that means is that once immigration receives your application, within 24 hours they're going to send you a text message or an email letting you know that they received your application. Next form. Thank you. And then the next letter that you include along with your forms is a cover letter. Obviously, immigration is processing a lot of cases. They don't want to just get a packet full of information and not know why it is that you're submitting what you're submitting. So the cover letter explains. It goes over all of the requirements that we went over momentarily, and it basically lists exactly what it is that you're using to prove each requirement. And then this was the actual DACA application. It's the form I-821D. If you notice at the top, it actually is for USCIS to fill out. There's a section that says, and it's kind of blurry on the screen, but on your packets, it'll say requester interviewed on. That means that there is a possibility, although slight, that students applying for DACA will be interviewed. We think it's most likely in cases of fraud, but is a possibility that your students should be aware of. And so then there's biographical information, for example, your name, where you were born, your birth date. There's information about whether or not you've ever applied for any type of relief in the past, if you got an A number, or if the government gave you a social security number, any other names listed. So it's pretty much self-explanatory, so feel free to look through it. There's also a section for you to list what high school you graduated from or what GED program you're in right now. And so these are pretty much the questions that are pretty standard in everyone's packets.
You're asking about high school, not about college.
Yeah, so that's something important to point out. Some people think that they have to list what college they currently attend, but that's not the case. It's just the high school. That's the only requirement that you need, a high school or GED. Great. So now this is where the students will list all their addresses, and they'll note that they've been here since June 15th of 2007 and have lived here since. And I'll also state if there's any brief in terms where they left the United States. Through DACA, you can leave the United States after 2007 and still apply. It's just a matter of you having to reveal why it is that you came or why it is that you left, how long did you leave for, those kind of things. And then it's up to the discretion of the government whether or not they want to give you DACA. Next one. And so this is just where it goes through the criminal history. There's a series of questions regarding criminal background and also national security concerns. You can read that on your own. And then they sign in this box right here, of course reading the top and the bottom, which basically states that immigration has the right to pass on their information to whatever agency needed in order to make a determination. And so that's when it's a really good idea for the student to talk to the attorney, because the attorney will be able to tell them that there is a risk involved because you are presenting yourself to immigration, and so it's up to the student to determine whether or not it is a risk worth taking. Next section. So this is usually where the person who's filling out the application fills out their information. So in this case, one of the employees at Shirla filled it out, and it's just in order to keep the legitimacy of the process and show that you did get help when preparing these forms. Okay, great. And then this is just an additional space that they've provided us with, which is really helpful because sometimes people run out of space in like the address section. They've lived in 9 places their whole lives, for example, but there's only space for 3. So then here you have additional space to explain certain things that maybe you didn't have enough space to explain in the actual application. Next part. So this is the 765 form. This is basically asking for your employment authorization document, needing permission to work in the United States. And so the information's pretty much the same. It doesn't really change. Next slide. Yeah, so the information's all the same. And if they get DACA, then they get their employment authorization document, which is valid for 2 years. So this is the second part of the form I just talked about. This is the worksheet. So basically this gives a chance for your students to be able to explain why it is that they want to work in the United States and why it is that they need to work in the United States. And as I mentioned before, DACA is a form of discretionary policy, so that means that whoever's reading their application has the right to say yes or no. And if they say no, they don't really have to tell you why it is that they're denying your application. And so instead of just asking for an employment authorization document, USCIS is providing this additional form for you to explain why it is that you need to work. Do you have a family that you're raising? Do you want to help out at home? Are you paying tuition? It also asks the student to list like how much they earn, how much they spend a year, and if they have any assets. And then this one right here is a survey that we provide, but we can skip that right ahead. And then this right here,
With the survey allows us to map where people are coming from.
Okay.
This is who we're servicing.
Great. So this is kind of the demographics of where we've served thus far. And these are our contact information. And so now we can't really open it up for questions, I believe, because we're short on time. But as educators, I just want to really encourage you all to really be supportive through this whole process. As you can tell, it's a long process. So far, immigration is taking about a month and a half to process cases, but some students are getting back forms saying that they need more information, etc. And so it's very psychologically affecting these students, and so if you can just be supportive and just check in on them, make sure they're okay and that they're comfortable and that they're not really scared about this whole process. Yes?
If we have students who need assistance, do they just call the dental number or is there a better?
Yes. So feel free to pass on our information to your students. There's other providers out there as well, Edison, Public Counsel, or a few that we commonly recommend. And so yeah, we would love to help them. We're one of the ones that charges the least amount, so if your student is low income. Well, the rates are going to change, but currently it's about $80, but it might go up depending on our budget.
And then in August, the appointment time was until December.
Yeah.
Or the appointment time now.
Yeah, so there is a backup, there is a delay in processing just because there's so many people coming to our office specifically. But again, like we do have a lot of references that we can refer people out to. We have a lot of good organizations that are doing amazing work as well that can help your students if we can.
So what is the appointment time right now?
Right now, it's about the same as you just mentioned, about like December or so, just because with the elections, we haven't tried to really book too many more appointments because we don't know what's going to happen. Oops, sorry. Any last comments? Yes?
You guys have workshops for students or families that want to come and
Yes. Do you want to talk about the Dreams on Wheels, Luis, real quick? Do you want to talk about the Dreams on Wheels? Real quick, just like how can they contact you or Shirla to get a presentation out there?
Right now we have a pilot program, the Dreams on Wheels, and it's really to target 3 areas that have very low DACA services, the San Fernando Valley, the San Gabriel Valley, and South Los Angeles. And this is a project of the California Community Foundation, so we are focused on LA County. In December, so it's a pilot program, but in December we'll find out if we get to expand that program, and at that point we'll be able to go to more places on a weekly basis. But right now we only have the 8 of those. If President Obama wins, then we know that the DACA is going to continue, and then we'll be able to expand our program and next year be able to do a lot more of those do-it-yourself clinics. In this clinic, we're focusing on the 17-year-olds, and it is to help them fill out the application on their own with our supervision, and then we revise and make sure that they have a complete packet. Other than that, Cheerlight is hosting orientations Monday through Thursday at 10 a.m. and at 3 p.m. on Thursdays at 10 a.m. and at 6 p.m. We're also doing volunteer training similar to this one, but we will go more in detail. If you wanted to, as an educator, you're eligible to volunteer at Cheerlight. We're avoiding people who may have a tax business or something that could be a conflict of interest with Cheerlight. But as educators, you guys can volunteer at Cheerlight. We'll train you to help us do applications. You're welcome to do that. So yeah, orientations Monday through Thursdays, 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Thursdays. Friday and Saturday, we're not doing orientations, but we are processing applications for people that already have an appointment.